Alright, and hello everybody. I'm the Super27 and welcome to a new style of video for this channel. For those of you who are familiar with my YouTube channel content, this will probably seem like something totally out of left field, and even more so since I haven't uploaded anything aside from YouTube Shorts since last Christmas. That in of itself is a whole can of worms that isn't the focus of this video. I know I've said this before, but I do still fully intend to make a video explaining my whole situation over the past year that has made me largely disappear from the internet and my social media personas. But let's focus on this video, the history behind it, and the reason why it was uploaded today. Today is my girlfriend's birthday, and she's a massive fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so this is one of my gifts to her. Happy birthday, Gray. I love you so much, and I really hope that you're going to enjoy this. But I'm going to be honest. I've been wanting to talk about my experience with JoJo's, and I found this to be a great opportunity. I, for years, have avoided the anime, manga, and the community at large. Not because it was overhyped or it's Shonen Jump slop, but because of the community. And I fully understand the irony of a Dragon Ball fan complaining about community interactions, but hear me out. There are two camps of JoJo's fans that I've come across, those who seem to hate their own show, and those who dick ride the series creator Araki to no end. Every time I would engage with the community, it would always be something along the lines of skip part 1 and part 2, jump straight into the stand era, the Hamon era is the really only one that matters, part 4 slice of life is the only really good one, just have it in the background and chill, blah blah blah, you get the idea. And on the other side, you have people constantly claiming that JoJo's is peak fiction, that everything's a JoJo's reference, and so on. It was annoying as an outsider. And half of the fun of enjoying anything is sharing your experience with others. It's the main reason I started this YouTube channel and Twitch streams in the first place. I wanted to make a community where I could share what I was passionate about with others, so I was really turned off by all these different experiences. That was until earlier this year, when I sat down with my girlfriend and we watched all 6 parts and the pilot episode for part 7. After watching it all, needless to say, a lot of what I thought about the series turned out to be true. But I was pleasantly surprised by other aspects. And not all of you may know this, but I myself am a creative writer. As a matter of fact, I'm currently pursuing my creative writing degree. Therefore, I think I know a thing or two about what good writing is and how to translate that into an entertaining format. Which brings us to the crux of this video. I will be analyzing the first season, or part 1 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Phantom Blood. But because this is the internet, and I know people will inevitably be outraged by something I say, I want to establish some guidelines. Firstly, everything I say is my opinion. Feel free to agree or disagree with anything I say, maybe even drop a comment down below telling me how abhorrently stupid I am. But that also means I will only be taking into account my own experiences with JoJo's. So no actuallys and the manga. I don't want to hear Hamon Beat actually debunked something years ago. None of that. My initial viewing of the series is all that matters. It was done watching the dub adaptation, while my second viewing for research for this video was the subbed version. Secondly, I fully understand that there is a difference between something being good and something being enjoyable. Listen, I played Dead by Daylight for fun. Even though the game and its community is an absolute dumpster fire, I still find enjoyment out of it. So if I say something is bad, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. More so, it just doesn't work for me, or it's a fundamental flaw in writing, storytelling, or so on. Just because I may sound harsh at times or whatever, that doesn't mean that you still can't find inspiration or take something away from what I am criticizing. Third, like I said before, I've never really made a video like this before. Therefore, if I don't articulate any of my points very well, I'm going to apologize for that in advance. And lastly, again, this is a gift from my girlfriend. I'm not making this or doing this for anyone or anything other than us. I don't expect this video to do well, like at all, but if it somehow, some way, this video finds its way into the algorithm and does well, this can become an actual series where I'll look at the rest of the series in the same way. With that all out of the way, be sure to check out my girlfriend's YouTube channel after you finish watching this video. She's got all sorts of wacky videos, so if you like Pokemon, Dragon Ball, TCGs, and so on, you're gonna love her. Go check out how her corn changed modern technology video and comment that Sweetbro sent you. I'll link it down below. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you, but enough stalling. Let's get into the review.
Fully
Episode 1 opens on a pretty gruesome carriage accident in the year 1868. A man named Dario Brando and his wife encounter the crash and begin to loot whatever they can in an attempt to get rich. While initially it looks like everyone involved in the crash had passed away, there were actually 2 survivors, those being George Joestar and his baby boy, Jonathan Joestar. George, believing Dario had come to rescue him, feels forever indebted to the man. More on that later. But more importantly, we are introduced to an odd-looking stone mask, which will also be important later, so keep those in the back of your mind. We then flash forward 12 years to see Jonathan and Dario's son, Dio. The anime quickly establishes a stark difference between the two boys' living situations. While Jonathan enjoys a life of luxury, Dio lives in the English slums. Then we are introduced to another central character, that being Irina. She's being picked on by 2 boys who are stealing one of her dolls. Jonathan, like the true gentleman that he is, charges headfirst to confront these bullies, and promptly gets his ass kicked. Remember this, Jonathan gets absolutely bitched here. This is going to come back in a minute, much sooner than that little thing that I already set up foreshadowing wise about the stone mask and the forever feeling indebted to Dario thing. Despite objectively losing the fight, Irina is still flattered at Jonathan's good deed, and this sets up a cute young love romance between the two. Also, random little side note here, but sometimes the style and font for the subtitles just change for seemingly no reason at all. It doesn't happen a lot, but every time it did happen, I noticed it. It was just a strange little oddity that I couldn't ignore. But meanwhile, Dario is literally on his deathbed and he instructs Dio to go find George Joestar to give him a chance at a better life. Immediately, this is kind of odd since the last time we saw these two, Dario was literally throwing a glass bottle at his son's head, but hey, the plot is gonna plot, I guess. After spitting on his father's grave, Dio arrives with extreme gravitas to the Joestar Manor. Trigger warning for some violence against animals here, but Dio just fucking kicks the shit out of Jonathan's dog, Danny. Before a fight can break out between the boys, George arrives and orders the boys inside. He ends up taking Dio's side, claiming he was merely caught off guard by having a large animal charging at him. On their way into their rooms, Dio makes sure to let Jonathan know that he will make his life utterly miserable. Then we have a quick little montage of George being disappointed in Jonathan compared to Dio. Dio is smarter and appears to be much more of a gentleman. And if that wasn't enough, the two are now just in an outdoor boxing match, which I guess is something that people did back in England circa 1880. Jonathan gets utterly wrecked for the second time this episode, and it really makes you wonder why the hell this kid boxes for fun when he's clearly outmatched by his peers, but heck, that's besides the point. This is also where we get the first showing of exaggerated blood splatters in JoJo's, which they are famous for. A single punch to the face sends a gush of blood everywhere that just, magically disappears in between scenes. It's goofy, violent fun, and I vibe with that. But back to the match, Dio plays dirty and he wins. While Jonathan is defeated, Dio just badmouths him to all the onlookers who immediately just believe him. This is probably the first true showcasing of Dio's incredible persuasive charisma. He just arrived into town, beat the shit out of a local citizen using dirty tactics, mind you, and he's kicking him while he's down. And everyone just believes him. We transition to see the same bullies from before, but now they're taunting Jonathan for being a snitch. To which Jonathan just charges right at him, assumably to engage in even more fisticuffs. I genuinely don't think I could mentally handle if our MC got cooked 3 consecutive times in just the pilot episode. Jonathan, genuinely, consider pumping the brakes. You clearly do not have that dog in you. At least, not yet. Irina returns and gives Jonathan some grapes and a cleaned up handkerchief, which, I totally just didn't mention earlier. But that's besides the point. The little moment is cute. The two then start hanging out and going out on little dates. This is a very fun contrast, seeing Jonathan be happy instead of literally everyone around him just making him miserable in one way or another. But this is short-lived when arguably one of the most iconic scenes in the franchise happens. Gonna admit, having one of your most memed on moments literally being the sexual assault of a minor, kinda gross. But Irina, like the fucking badass she is, drinks muddy water to rinse her mouth out. Queen shit right there. Dio, enraged, He just fucking slaps her, sending her flying. Jesus Christ, dude. It ain't that deep. And then he just kind of waddles away with his 2 chud followers. But this does set up one of Dio's flaws in his acknowledgement of it, that being his temper. Arena avoids Jonathan after this, feeling ashamed and all, and meanwhile, even more of the town bullies are taunting Jonathan because of it. But this ignites something within him. He is tired of being pushed around. He charges home, in an admittedly silly first-person point-of-view shot that I love, and yet another fight scene breaks out. Alright, so let me guess, Jonathan gets bitched yet again. Oh shit! Let's go, JoJo! But, of course, since Jonathan isn't allowed to have nice things in the pilot, I guess, George shows back up and he scolds both of the boys. Again, I'm gonna throw up another violence trigger warning, but Dio gets revenge for losing this fight in such a fucked up way. He hides Danny in the outdoor trash furnace where he is burned alive. This is another one of the things Araki seems to do a lot to make his villains seem more heinous. So, just know this for the future. If there's ever a dog or a cat in a scene, it's gonna be dying in some comedically cruel way. I'm not a huge fan of this. Let's take another one of my hyperfixations into account, FNAF's William Afton. A lot of fan games like to make him a PDF file, as well as a child unaliver, if you catch my drift. Listen, the guy is already super evil. We don't need to add in all that extra stuff to make him a deplorable villain. The same thing happened with the new Nightmare on Elm Street remake, where Freddy Krueger, who was already a supervillain, didn't need all that extra stuff to confirm that he was a way worse guy. Little tangent aside, Jonathan instantly knows Dio was the one who killed Danny, while everyone else just believes it was some random burglar. This episode ends with a little bit more exposition, and a big emphasis is placed on the stone mask from before. See? Told y'all I'd be coming back. But, we're gonna be talking about it even more later on, so I don't know why I brought it back up here. Overall, while this first episode was pretty repetitive and rushed in some areas, it was still a pretty effective pilot episode in my opinion. A lot of the series' tropes are actually established in a single episode. It doesn't stand out in any meaningful way, but it does set up the central conflict between the 2 boys that'll be the through line for the rest of this series. Before talking about the second episode, I want to discuss the opening intro. The intro wasn't a part of the first episode, likely so that the title card could have more of a moment within the episode in of itself. And with how bloated the first episode was in terms of content, it was likely withheld to really make the most of the pilot's runtime. The animation studio Kamikaze Doga is responsible for animating this amazing animation. The blending of the JoJo's iconic style with CGI elements is so pleasing to the eye, and they get really dynamic with the camera work and the cinematography. This feels like such a love letter to the entire franchise, starting with the manga flip panel and then going into part 1's due emphasis. Most of the shots are actually original compositions, while others are direct homages. We get to see the sexual assault of Arena, again. Really glad that moment is what gets a direct reference instead of I don't know, Zeppelin's death or Jonathan's Hamon mastery. Oops, spoilers! But seeing as the script is currently on page 4 and 2,038 words long, you may forget that little slip up. I honestly have no frame of reference for how long this will take. As for the music, my initial watch through, I really wasn't a massive fan of it. Chino Sadame just didn't really click with me, aside from the latter half of the song when the tempo shift occurred. And the guttural shout of JoJo genuinely always sent a shiver down my spine. But on my second watch through, I just couldn't bring myself to skipping it. Ami Tamanaga's vocals and Kohei Tanaka's composition just oozes the energy of a lifelong adventure. It really embodies the spirit of Part 1 and the JoJo's franchise as a whole. It's simply amazing. Probably one of my favorite openings of the entire series, even though a few others come kinda close. Off the top of my head, Part 3's third opening, Part 4's disco opening, and its final OST, and maybe the first opening to Part 5 are in competition for my personal favorites, just in case anyone was curious. We'll get back to Part 1's music just a little bit later on, but let's get back to discussing the plot of Episode 2. We are randomly shown the scene of one of Jack the Ripper's murders 7 years after the pilot episode, which is hilariously contrasted when, after receiving a little bit of exposition about Jack's tirades, the narrator starts talking about Jonathan and Dio before the stone mask is used as a scene transition to the opening intro we just discussed? What? Afterwards, we get to see an older Jonathan, who is built like a fucking statue by the way, playing in a game of football. We're also introduced to a little running gag that my girlfriend wished persisted between each part of the entire franchise, that being that each Joestar member gets verbally called out as 195 centimeters tall. Jonathan, the fucking Giga Chad that he is tackled by not one, not two, but 3 different people, and this bitch just keeps on trucking. This is a total contrast to the physical performance that I ragged on him for the entire last episode. These 7 years for Jonathan were like the complete opposite of what happened to Gohan during his 7-year time jump. But what's this? Jonathan passes the ball to Dio? Dio is playing on the same side as Jonathan? With incredible speed and precision, Dio scores the touchdown, winning the entire game. The two brothers dap each other up in celebration, so I guess they became more mature and placed their feud on ice. That's actually very adult of them. You know, people can change and they aren't defined by their past actions. As long as we ignore, the genuine sexual assault and fucking dog arson murder. But hey, I digress. Oh wait, I guess Jonathan didn't forgive and forget after all. Forget that little tangent I just went on then. Oh, and Dio's faking it too? Alright, well fuck me then. We then see that George is sick. Very, very sick. He's trying to act strong and pretend his illness isn't as bad as it really is, assumably to keep his boys from dreading the inevitable. Later, Jonathan is performing some kind of research or experiment with the stone mask. He stabs his finger like his name is Ben Gates and drops his blood on a seemingly super rare artifact. The mask reacts, just like how we saw in the pilot episode, violently shooting out a series of sharp spikes. We learn that originally, the mask belonged to Jonathan's mother, which makes this researching scene kinda bittersweet for him. As Jonathan is reaching for a new book, he knocks over a completely different book, which just so happens to have a letter from Dario Brando. This gives him some very bad vibes, and for good reason. We learn that Dio poisoned Dario and is doing the same thing to George by swapping out his cold medicine for, well, poison. Jonathan confronts Dio, and this gets the two into a tense argument. Dio threatens to hate Jonathan forever for not trusting him after all this time and bonding that the two have gone through. Jonathan then pulls out the whole gentleman card and insists that Dio swears on Dario's honor that he hasn't tampered with George's health in any way. This was a trap, however. Jonathan knew that Dio was way too prideful to admit a thing. This very well may be the first aha moment that we get to see from Araki's writing. Throughout the series, there is a major theme between almost every single conflict that goes something like this. A challenge is introduced, its rules or powers are explained, the heroes claim they have no idea what they can do to stop this or that something is impossible to overcome, then miraculously, the solution to the problem is just discovered, triumphant music blares, and the impossible wall crumbles, and so on. While this isn't as bombastic as some later examples that we're going to see in the series, I still think this truly is the first example of it, which I found neat and wanted to point out to you all. Dio lashes out, punching Jonathan right in the face. But my goat of an MC absolutely no diffs the punch while asserting his dominance over Dio. He read him like a book, and Dio exposed his entire devious plot without having to verbally admit to anything. In retaliation, holy fucking shit, Jonathan just threw Dio over the banister. Did you guys see how long the staircase leading up there was? Dio has to have a fractured ribcage, broken bones, a concussion. The dude just might be dead. Literally, Jonathan was about to kill Dio here. In hindsight, he would have saved his lineage a lot of grief if he actually did kill Dio here, but hey, that's besides the point. Jonathan plans to head to London to have the medicine Dio intended to give to George analyzed to prove for 100% certainty something nefarious was going on. Dio is fine with this though. Since he grew up in the underbelly of London, he knows how violence runs rampant down there. He is confident that Jonathan will not return. Or we can go with that explanation. The plot is gonna plot, I guess. And wait, did Dio ever actually even see the mask shoot those spikes out 7 years ago? Editor me. Do something funny here to confirm or deny this. I don't care what you do. And even if he did see the mask transformation, why would he remember that now in this situation? Why wouldn't he have done this plan way earlier on? Dio, for a character who is supposed to be extremely intelligent, you're kind of fumbling the bag here. Jonathan arrives in London 2 days later. He asserts that the medicine must be an Asian medicine. Okay, random. He enters Ogre Street, the supposedly most dangerous place in all of London, where we see a cat eating a dog. Dude, what the fuck is even happening anymore? Alright, well, suddenly a group of thieves all charge at Jonathan, led by Speedwagon. Jonathan continues to be so freaking strong, he catches a knife attack with his bare hands. He then swiftly knocks out the first assailant when Speedwagon now enters the brawl. His hat is revealed to have spinning saw blades inside of the brim. He throws his hat at Jonathan and he just tanks it. Dude, Jonathan already has to be using Hammond or something because, like, dude, this kid is durable as hell. He shrugs off having actual saw blades cutting through his flesh and digging into his bones, and then he just kicks Speedwagon so hard, man, that he's sent flying. But wait, there's more, as in, like, I don't know. Like 100 more thieves all show up ready to try and test the champ, but Speedwagon, already finding a deep appreciation for Jonathan, calls off all of their attacks. He's calling him a true gentleman, and the two quickly become friends, and they set off to find the man who sells Asian medicine. Hey, so this is Sweet Bro from the editing room, and I'm just gonna come in and kind of take over here. So the original bit that I had for this section, I thought was clever at the time, but its execution was incredibly cringe. I had made a Hollywood Undead parody of the song Everywhere I Go, but like describing the scene, and I thought it was really cool and good, but my delivery sucked because, again, I am right next door to where my girlfriend sleeps, and I had to be very, very quiet not to wake her up. So I was just like talking and not singing, and it sounded really bad, so I'm just cutting it. Fuck you. All you really need to know is that Dio was drunk, he killed a guy, and he put the stone mask on the other one. And it looked like he died too. That is until the guy just stands back up, reborn as a vampire. And get this, the vampire guy just fucking demolishes an entire stone wall and launches Dio like 30 feet into a stone pillar. Listen, I know I've been gassing up Jonathan like this entire episode, but maybe Dio deserves more credit. He should be dead. Deader than dirt at this point. But luckily for Dio, the sun rises and disintegrates the vampire. The episode then ends with Dio returning home after being confronted by Jonathan. And wait, what? The to be continued stinger didn't line up with the ending OST? What? Hold on, wait a damn minute. And like every meme edit I have ever seen uses the JoJo's to be continued, and the arrow and the music, they line up. Here, editor me, do another example. This is just so unsatisfying. If it weren't for all the memes showing me that this was a possibility, I probably wouldn't even care about something so small, but Jesus does that irk the hell out of me. And here's a quick spoiler, it never syncs up. Not one time. Why are JoJo memesters of all people more aware to attention to detail than an animation studio? Grr, grumble grumble, me no likey. That aside, this episode was pretty good. The story is progressing in a natural way. Every scene and every detail plays a part in the overall narrative, and it doesn't feel like any time is really being wasted. I like how the brothers' rivalry has shifted from a blanket hatred to a literal murder scheme. Jonathan getting to become the stoic gentleman and hero he's always wanted to be is so satisfying, and the introduction of Speedwagon will pay off in dividends in later episodes and the entire franchise as a whole. And introducing the importance of the Stone Mask here was just spectacular. This relatively grounded story is finally getting bizarre, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. This episode also feels less bloated than the pilot. It is a little less exciting since we're actually developing the story here instead of all these character interactions and traits. So this episode is actually able to take its time and have these elements breathe naturally, which isn't a bad thing. I actually prefer that. Overall, the show is moving into a good direction, and as more and more elements are being introduced, I'm so excited to see what happens next. So let's go ahead and jump into episode 3. We pick up immediately from where the last episode left off. As Jonathan explains his disappointment in Dio's portrayal, Dio knows the jig is up and he has to start relying on his supernatural levels of charisma to try and find a way out. He tugs at Jonathan's heartstrings, asking him to turn himself in. In all actuality, he plans to quickly kill Jonathan while wearing the stone mask, turning himself into a vampire. This almost works, because damn, Dio is a fantastic liar. Yet, Speedwagon interrupts him. Also, the amount of aura in this reveal is insane. Bro was just hiding in the shadows as he ignites a match to illuminate himself while calling Dio the lowest of the low and a snake-like liar. He even takes this a step further, saying he was never seen someone as evil as Dio. He basically sniffs out Dio's lie, revealing the man who sold Dio the Asian medicine, and hilariously, he had him hiding behind another curtain this whole time, and those curtains, they're in front of the windows. So why didn't Dio see them on his way in? The perspective changes a few times during the sequence, so it's tricky to place exactly where they were hiding this guy, but I don't know, it just feels silly for me. Then, from behind yet another curtain, George Joestar, a warden, and several police guards make their presence known. As a final last-ditch effort, Dio insists that his brother, Jonathan, is the one who locks him up in handcuffs. While I feel sure there are many Yaoi fan artists out there who were very excited by this offer, Speedwagon reminds Jonathan to be careful. After Dio has a small rant about humanity, he relinquishes his. He whips out a knife and he plunges it right into the Joestar's heart. Only he struck the wrong Joestar. He limply falls through the window as his body grows still. But since he was wearing the stone mask, we all know it's only a matter of time before we get to see him again. The two Joestars share a tender moment, rekindling their relationship. George admits that he was too harsh on Jonathan and that he fixated too much on Dio. Their final moments together are sweet, and it's upsetting. George eventually passes away, in the arms of a true gentleman. This even brings the hardened Speedwagon to tears. And at the same time, we learn more about Dario Brando. The police warden had arrested him years prior for stealing George's wife's ring. Jonathan lies and admits that he had actually given the ring to Dario, repaying a debt that he felt that he owed him. Alright, hold on, but wait. If that were the case, why did George have the ring now? If he gave it to... Ignore me. And instead focus on this really sad scene. I mean, this is already so tragic. What could make this any worse? Jesus Christ. Anyway, that was unexpectedly violent. Dio now goes on the attack with his cute little fangs hanging out. That isn't very intimidating, man. Like, put those away. I cannot be the only one who thinks his little fangs right there are adorable, right? Anywho, Dio starts slowly approaching everyone. Jonathan grabs the employer of Shadow the Hedgehog and demands Dio stand down. When he doesn't have it in him to pull the trigger, Speedwagon fucking headshots Dio. This does nothing to slow down the new vampire as he continues his approach. Dio starts absolutely fucking that shit up, drinking a man alive with his fingers? Wait, what? Then what are your fangs for, my guy? Are you stupid? He throws the remains of his meal at the remaining officers so hard that they are ripped apart upon contact. This decommissioned Speedwagon, leaving just Jonathan to confront his rival. Dude, Jonathan is so fucking cool. He jumps over to a suit of armor, grabs its weapon, and readies himself to fight. The officers from before, you know, the guy who literally just got his soul sucked out by Dio, yeah, you know, Yaoi fans, again, pipe down. Well, he comes back as some sort of zombie, which is a short-lived threat as Jonathan uses the spear to slice its head in half. Hell yes, Jonathan. But when Dio attacks, things get slightly more complicated. The spear pierces right through his hand, but it hardly affects him. Unfortunately, this is where Speedwagon loses most of his agency as a character, and he will become a beacon for exposition. And don't get me wrong, exposition is important in all forms of storytelling. But here is my criticism because this persists for every single part of JoJo's. The earlier parts have far too small of a supporting cast, while the later parts have way too big of one. And Araki's style of writing doesn't always use these characters in a satisfying way. Part 1 and Part 2 are basically the Jonathan and Joseph show exclusively. Then Part 3, for instance, is truly the Polnareff show with occasionally showcasing from other characters. There are many episodes where only one or two of the protags are interacting with the plot in any meaningful way, while all the other characters are off doing something entirely different and meaningless. If you don't know how to have all of your characters interact in a meaningful way in a story, that's frustrating. Don't have a cast that big if you don't know what to do with them. Speedwagon could basically be completely removed from the series from this point onwards, and nothing would change. Needless to say, Speedwagon uses his powers of exposition to explain Dio is healing from his previous wounds and appears to be immortal. Dio then shatters the spear, sending its tip straight into Jonathan. Jesus Christ, Yowie fans, pipe down. Anyway, Jonathan then sets up a trap for Dio, catching himself and the entire Joestar Manor on fire. Jonathan uses a sword as a parkour tool of all things and begins to ascend the mansion, egging Dio to follow him. This then leads to one of my favorite parts of part 1, where Dio is just walking up the walls to reach Jonathan. This is so raw. It is so raw. It is the only other direct reference to something that happens in the anime that I was able to pick up on that occurs in the opening OST. Jonathan is now up on the roof and Dio catches up to him and starts to attack. Jonathan is just ready to end this senseless feud and he tackles the both of them down into a hole in the roof. With nothing left but his life, he's ready to do whatever it takes. Dio even shatters his bones and my goat is still clinging on to him, speeding up their descent. Calling upon his father for strength, Jonathan's pleas are answered, as a family statue pierces into Dio's flesh, causing him to erupt into a smoky dust. The episode ends on a really somber note that is also pretty uplifting, as Speedwagon is clinging to the body of his new friend, cheering that he did it. Episode 3 was fantastic, one of the best episodes in this entire part. Its first half was narratively well structured, feeling like a natural conclusion to the first 2 episodes. And then the action portion of the latter half of this episode was simply amazing. It feels very Fist of the North Star, which I've been told was one of Araki's main inspirations when making the original manga all the way back in the 80s or whenever the series actually began. Speedwagon's tender moments, again, they're so sweet and I just love having him around, even though, again, this episode is the last time he will have any significant aura or purpose in the plot. And Jonathan is growing into his heroic protagonist role very well. He's shown to be a self-sacrificing character who's willing to do whatever it takes to prevail. I mean, this dude went from losing his brother, to losing his father, to witnessing several murders, to killing a vampire, to willing to die to kill said vampiric Dio. This dude is like 19 years old, dude. That's so raw. The fact that he's able to maintain his morals and courage despite everything that just occurred around him is stellar character writing. And the vampires are so fun. We got to see just a bit of the vampire's toolkit, and there's so much more fun stuff to come. The ending is also very well done. If the series ended at Speedwagon Celebration, it would be a good ending in my opinion. Every plot point that was addressed and had narrative significance had come to a conclusion. Jonathan is now a gentleman and he's overcome his wicked brother. But the series doesn't end here, so let's go ahead and take a look at the next episode. Episode 4 begins with an injured Speedwagon going to check on Jonathan at the hospital a few days after the whole fight with Dio. From the hallway, he observes a nurse tending to Jonathan's wounds, and somehow he's able to tell that her hands are cracked from his position, implying that this nurse has been cooling the burn wounds for 3 solid days straight. But this nurse is just no random lady. It's actually a grown-up Arena. This little reunion is just so sweet. Jonathan even catches her when she slips despite all of his injuries. Keep in mind, at this point in the story, he's just a normal adult dude. So, despite being saw-bladed through his flesh all the way down to his bone, being pierced in the arm with a spear, having both of his arms crushed into dust, falling seemingly hundreds of feet, and suffered intense burns across his entire body, this gentleman still goes for the save. King shit right there. Hey, do y'all remember how, like, minutes ago I mentioned the Jack the Ripper thing? Yeah? Well, we jump over to him in the act of murdering some random woman in the streets of London. A crispy Dio appears behind him and through a combination of his insane charisma and his vampiric charm persuades Jack to be turned into a vampire off-screen. Back to what remains of the Joestar Manor, Jonathan is searching the rubble for the stone mask. He's confused as to where it could have possibly gone when Arena intercepts him. The two begin to go on a walk when yet another new quirky character is introduced. He attacks Jonathan with a vicious strike to the sternum. After falling to his knees, a sudden burst of energy courses through his body, instantly healing his broken arm, which is the opposite arm to the one that was stabbed. I don't know, I find it odd that his left arm is the one that was broken when Dio crushed both arms during their descent. And the puncture wound, which is never addressed, is the only difference injury-wise between the two arms. But what do I know? He could even lift that rock. Zeppeli informs Jonathan that both the Stone Mask and Dio are out there, somewhere, and the only way to stop their evil tirade is for Jonathan to learn and master Hammond. Zeppeli has personally spent years tracking down the Stone Mask, and he knows that he and Jonathan are destined to fight against the Mask's evil. After a week of training, Jonathan, Zeppeli, and Speedwagon make their way to Wind Knight's lot. After learning about a series of odd disappearances occurring and someone matching Dio's appearance being there. Entering a dark tunnel, their carriage just suddenly stops. Exiting the carriage to investigate what's wrong, it is revealed that their driver is dead and that a horse head was placed on top of the corpse. Fun! Then erupting from the dead horse's neck stump is Jack the Ripper. Upon seeing this, Zeppeli takes this as an opportunity to train his new student. He insists critical thinking is key to victory in battle. He correctly predicts Jack's first move, which is to cut off their one and only exit being the tunnel's entrance. As Jack does his next attack, which is launching knives out of his body as projectiles, Zeppeli shows off his technique known as the Hammond Cutter, completely countering Jack's attack without even spilling a single drop of his wine. Remember that. He is such an expert and has such extreme control over his body that he can move in a way that does not disturb his drink. I'll come back to this in like 2 seconds. Zeppeli again counters Jack's next attack by using his wine bottle to intercept one of Jack's stabs, with a spectacular Sendo wave kick, which is essentially a knee to the face, but whatever. He asserts that courage is the triumph and trophy of humanity. It is why Hammond will always defeat vampires and why good will always triumph over evil. After getting that knee to his face, and he flees into some hidden tunnels that were just built into the tunnel they were already in. For some reason. Zeppeli tasks Jonathan to find and finish off Jack, but under a restriction. Jonathan must do so carrying the same glass of wine, and if he spills as much as a single drop, he is going to call off the entire quest. Despite Speedwagon's protests, Jonathan accepts and he pursues after Jack. This new tunnel is pitch black, which is exactly where Jack does his best work. He triggers a flying trap that is adorned with blades that slice right into Jonathan's shoulder, and another display of extreme gore that just seems to go away in the next scene no problem. Maybe Jonathan has a self-healing Hammond ability that we never see or hear about at this point in the story? Who knows? Discarding his torch, Jonathan realizes he has to think like the enemy, just like Zeppeli demonstrated earlier. He then realizes the wine was actually a conduit for Hammond, and it helps him detect where Jack is hiding. Jonathan unleashes his first Hammond overdrive and obliterates Jack in one decisive blow, which brings this episode to a powerful conclusion. Before we move on to the next episode, I wanted to continue our discussion about the music, this time about all the OSTs used throughout the entire series. Primarily, the instrumentals are this beautiful orchestral backing. There is this very strong emphasis on the horn section in basically every track. You could say that it's very storytell-like, where the hero Jonathan is surrounded by this glorious brass section, where the villainous Dio is covered by sinister string instruments and woodwinds. I think, while very simplistic and stereotypical, the music does a great job of portraying its scene's themes through its music. The happier things have this energy of adventure, while the more sinister themes have you feeling a sense of dread. And I do think that Jonathan's theme, and excuse me if I butchered this here, Fukutsu Mushino Sakabi, really embodies these feelings. But there are still also plenty of experimental tracks in the OST lineup as well, with some fast-paced techno beats to something that I can only describe as the South Park opening with the track Hermetic Arts User. The music is pretty great all throughout with a variety of genres. Again, none of the tracks, aside from maybe's Jonathan's, will stick with you when you aren't actively watching the show. They still do their part in assisting the atmosphere of the show, which I appreciate. But with that all out of the way, let's jump right into episode 5. As our crew enters Wind Night Lot, they are quickly attacked when a child flings himself using some sort of rudimentary slingshot and then steals all of their supplies. Zeppeli quickly gives chase using Hamon to walk on water. Jesus. Well, I guess literally Jesus. Jonathan tries to do the same, but he just can't quite get it. The child thief is climbing a cliff to try and get away, so Jonathan sends just a little bit of that Hamon energy through the mountain and to knock him down. But this was actually a trap by the one and only Dio. As the sun goes down, Dio's zombie horde crawls out of the ground and attacks. And we learn the name of the boy. His name is Poco. Poco must have also been under Dio's hypnotic spell, and seemingly the Hamon energy coursing through his body returned him back to his normal state. Zeppeli is swiftly taking care of numerous zombie soldiers, and then he sets his sights on the Vampire Lord. Zeppeli uses his most powerful technique that we've seen yet, the Sunlight Yellow Overdrive. But clearly he doesn't understand the matchup because Dio is playing Mayakashi's, and when he pulls out his Yuki Ona's quick effect to reduce a monster's attack to 0, he's surprised. Jokes aside, Dio does one of my favorite uses of the vampiric power set here. He has complete and utter control of his body, meaning he can shift his body's moisture levels. This causes the air around him to quickly freeze, which then flash freezes Zeppeli's arm. God, Dio's ice powers are so cool. Sure would be a shame if they get completely abandoned later on for some fuck-ass bird to have ice power attacks with, in the stand era. Oh god. Jonathan catches up and intercepts a devastating blow, while Poco is still on his back. This poor kid has got to be so traumatized and confused right now. Me too, Poco. Me too. Dio tries to flash freeze Jonathan's arms, but Zeppeli acts fast and knocks them all away from Dio's grasp. Back on the ground, Dio summons 2 of his strongest soldiers to crawl up from their graves. Now introducing Araki's hyperfixation of the week, Tarkus and Bluford. The 2 knights have their sights set out on Jonathan. 2 issues. They appear to be way stronger than Jonathan, and Zeppeli is still decommissioned until his blood flow returns to his arm. This is when Speedwagon remembers he's a character with agency and sets up for his ultimate sacrifice of making his chest and tummy kinda uncomfortably cold for a little bit. Way to take one for the team, Speedwagon. You're really contributing there. Bluford is the first to attack, using his hair to drink Jonathan's blood. Okay, again, what is the fucking point of having fangs if you can just use any random ass body part to drain your enemies dry? Regardless, Jonathan uses the heat from his Scarlet Overdrive to free himself from Bluford's hair bondage. Bluford attacks again, now using his hair to wield his sword. Fucking okay. Whatever, man. Jonathan barely dodges, stumbling off the cliff and into the water down below. Dio dips, assuming that his soldiers can take care of Jonathan and his crew. And then he just, turns into smoke. Can this motherfucker teleport too? What can't he do? Jonathan realizes that he's kind of screwed while underwater since he needs to, breathe to channel his Hamon energy. But then there is another one of these Araki aha moments, but this one is a little bit different. I don't think any logical human would think of this solution in this situation, but I digress. Jonathan swims downward, overturning a stone, which then releases an air bubble. Now with air in his lungs, he's able to channel another Hamon attack, charging at Bluford and bringing this episode to a close. Now is probably as good of a time as ever to talk about the power systems in part 1. I love both the Vampiric and Hamon toolkit. They were designed to be one another's polar opposites. Hamon energy draws from one's control of air within their blood to harness the energy of the sun. Meanwhile, the undead sacrifice their humanity to harness their own power set of, the moon, I guess. Both have complete control of their bodies, can heal from grievous wounds, and get incredible boosts to their physical traits, and can master entirely new techniques. We'll see later that Dio can alter the biology of other living creatures and can shoot laser beams, as well as we've already seen his body moisture manipulation, his hypnotic capabilities, his teleporting, I guess, and his remarkable healing factor. Hamon users, on the other hand, can channel their Hamon energy through different mediums for various effects. The Yellow Overdrive is kind of like the Kamehameha for part 1. It's just a basic but really effective technique. Then we saw the Scarlet Overdrive can conduct heat in this episode, and next episode we'll see how water and metal can conduct Hamon in their own unique ways. And the best part is many of these techniques are direct counters for one another. It is an amazing power system that has literally infinite possibilities. We've seen that zombies and vampires other than Dio already have their own unique powers too. Bluford can manipulate his hair as if it were an arm, and even Jack could shoot out knife blades out of his body. I can't wait to see how this power system gets built upon in later installments. It sure would be a shame if the entire power system was entirely, abandoned without ever being fully realized or even referenced again. But that would be one hell of a bizarre decision for Araki to make. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
No. Wait.
Episode 6 begins where the last episode left off. Jonathan rocketing towards Bluford, sending both of them back onto the land. Bluford thanks Dio for giving him another opportunity at life, therefore giving him a chance to battle such a great warrior. Jonathan comments on how Bluford's pride still persists in his new undead form, but he's become something wicked. Bluford ensnares Jonathan in his hair, again. Okay, Jonathan, this guy attacked you like this 3 or 4 times with his hair. It's time for you to, start adapting or something, okay, pal? What the fuck, Jonathan? If you could do that while having your blood drained and therefore weakening yourself, why haven't you done that before? Furthermore, what about the Scarlet Overdrive earlier? Yeah, I guess that technique was meaningless. Grrr, grumble, me don't like ye. Anyway, Jonathan channels more energy into his kick for his newest technique, the Metal Silver Overdrive, and it just liquefies Bluford's arm. Oh shit, that's metal. Do you guys get it? This shit. Anyway. But Jonathan attacks again, this time with the most bombastic Sunlight Yellow Overdrive that we've seen yet in the entire series. However, Bluford's sand pride makes him get up off of the ground and he charges for one final attack, actually using his arm to wield his blade this time. See guys? Character development. But something's different this time. Jonathan just doesn't dodge. The two warriors have gained a sense of respect for one another. As the Hamon energy is coursing throughout Bluford's body, his true nature begins to return to him as his body begins to fade away. The two warriors share a conversation about humanity and morals, which is pretty great in my opinion. Before fading away entirely and reuniting with the queen that he gave his life to protect, Bluford offers Jonathan his blade, now renamed Pluck. We aren't able to celebrate Jonathan's victory or mourn Bluford's redemption for very long as now Tarkus enters the battlefield, stomping on the armor of his fallen comrade. Side note, why the hell did Tarkus only now begin to do anything? Like, Zeppeli didn't have to fight him at all. They were all just idly watching the fight between Jonathan and Bluford, which, realistically, lasted maybe a minute in-universe. But with a single swipe of his gargantuan blade, he shatters yet another part of the cliff, sending Jonathan, Zeppeli, Speedwagon, and Poco falling to yet another pitfall. Which, spatially doesn't really make all that much sense, but whatever, go with it. We also get to see another Hamon technique that uses life energy to attract leaves together as if they were magnets. This works and makes a paraglider sort of thing for the gang to escape. God, I love Hamons. While gliding, Speedwagon jokes about not knowing how Zeppeli is able to come up with all of this stuff. So, maybe now is the best time to discuss Zeppeli's backstory. During his youth, he and his father were on an archaeological expedition to explore an Aztec pyramid, during which they came across the Stone Mask. One night, a massacre broke out, Zeppeli being the sole survivor. He had to have hit the fattest decisive strike of his life when he was the object of obsession for the vampiric crew member, who was actually his father. As the sun rose, he was dead by daylight, leaving Zeppeli lost at sea. This filled Zeppeli with a sense of determination. He had to prevent anyone else from mastering the Stone Mask's secrets. Later, in India, Zeppeli discovers a mysterious doctor who is able to heal any and all wounds. This doctor directs him to Tibet's Salween River so that he can learn the ways of Hamon. Upon meeting the master of the temple, Zeppeli learns a dreary prophecy of his fate. Hamon will ultimately alter his fate, causing him to die. Zeppeli has accepted this risk in a fearless act of self-sacrifice. So, maybe stop being attached to Zeppeli if you are. Just saying. Back in the present, Zeppeli decides to ultimately keep his fate a secret. At the same time, Tarkus just takes a leap of faith as if this is the Assassin's Creed franchise. In retrospect, I guess Leafs are close enough to a hay bale, so Our crew abandons ship just in time as they land on the remains of some ancient castle, with Tarkus quickly pursuing behind them. Jojo opens up a metal door to try and find a place for Poco to hide, but this was actually a trap. Tarkus is already inside. This chamber is a place of battle. Here, two warriors are chained to one another. The only way to free yourself is to kill your opponent. Things look pretty bleak. Zeppeli can't break inside, and Tarkus is just an unstoppable monster Jonathan stands no chance against alone. Tarkus capitalizes on his history of killing 48 opponents, yanking the chain which sends Jonathan crashing into the ceiling. Then he goes for a devastating kick that Jonathan barely dodges. Poco gets a moment to be a hero where he sneaks inside of the chamber and opens the door, but not before surviving a kick that realistically would have killed him like 500 times over. But way to take one for the team, Poco. You've done more for Jonathan than Speedwagon has at this point in the plot. With the door now opened, Zeppeli enters the chamber, ready to prove his Hamon prophecy true. Episode 7 begins as Zeppeli paces towards Tarkus, and a fight begins. He's able to swiftly dodge all of the brute's attacks with basic ease. That is, until Tarkus is able to wrap him up in the same chain that is connected to his collar. He pulls down hard, choking Jonathan and squeezing the life out of Zeppeli. Speedwagon watches on in horror as Zeppeli is split in half. Whoa. Tarkus, believing he has fulfilled Dio's orders, releases the chain. Just as all hope seems lost, Zeppeli, the badass that he is, inches himself closer to Jonathan. In a Shonen Jump classic strategy, he gives the last of his Hamon energy to Jonathan. As Hamon energy fills the room, Jonathan is able to get back up onto his feet. Fueled by rage and wanting to test out the might of his new powers, he effortlessly lifts the giant Tarkus into the air. In an even more impressive feat of strength, he's able to shatter the collar that's around his neck, something that not even Tarkus is capable of. Jonathan now stances up above the fearful Tarkus. He's faced a lot of bad men in his time, but you, sir, you are the worst. With just a few attacks, Tarkus is defeated. Zeppeli is still alive, but he's rapidly fading away without his Hamon energy. He begs for Jonathan to take up his mantle, to defeat Dio and to destroy the stone mask. And then with a smile on his face, he admits that he's content with his fate. His final passing is genuinely upsetting. While the narrator takes over here, I would have preferred for this moment just to be silent. Just have our protagonists mourn their friend's passing. Or maybe have Jonathan and Speedwagon erupt into tears. This is an emotional moment, which has a lot of narrative weight behind it, and it just feels lessened because of the narration. Rest in peace, Zeppeli. You were a great mentor and a great friend. You're gonna be missed, buddy. Man, how are they gonna follow up that scene? Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Okay, we're going back to Jonathan's POV now. Fuck whatever Dio is doing. Another one of Dio's zombies intercepts and attacks our heroes, but Jonathan at this point is all business, and he just obliterates the thing. That's when this Polnareff lookalike just enters the scene and he attacks Jonathan, but this was actually a test. Basically, Zeppeli wrote letters to 3 of his most powerful allies to assist in the battle against the Stone Mask, those being Lucky, Straightso, and Dyer. The episode comes to a close as we see Dio has captured Poco's sister and is holding her captive. Episode 8 shows Poco's sister resisting Dio's offer of eternal life. There's a specific line here that I find interesting, which will be used for Dio's primary motivations retroactively for later parts of the series.
今のままの若さで永遠を楽しみたいとは思わないかい？とは言ってもだ、このディオ、友情を押し付ける類の輩とは違うのでね。君の自由意志、君の運命は自分で選ぶんだ。After being slapped by the second woman in this series, Dio has actually learned from his mistakes. He decides to walk away so he can cool off and reflect on himself. This is actually a huge pivotal moment for the character, a chance for him to look inwards. Nah, I'm just fucking with you. He sends a gross snake man to presumably eat or assault the sister. God, this series is actually so fucking dark. But thankfully, Jonathan, the best gentleman there ever was, is here to save the day. Jonathan makes short work out of Doobie, wanting to get straight into his fight with Dio. However, Dyer insists that he has to be the one to avenge Zeppeli, and then he recklessly charges into battle. He pulls the same trick that he did on Jonathan, that being forcing his opponent to maneuver in a specific way, which then leaves them vulnerable for a follow-up attack.
This is thwarted by Dio's ice powers. Dio is able to shatter Dire's entire body, but you just can't keep these Hamon users down, man. Dire, as just ahead mind you, spits out a Hamon-fused rose right into Dio's eye. Dio's unbeatable facade begins to slip here as he orders his zombie bodyguards to attack. But that isn't what any of us care about. We're all here for the final showdown. Vampire versus Hamon. Brother versus brother. Gentleman versus monster. Humanity versus immortality. Dio was the first to attack, but Jonathan counters this by throwing more roses at Dio. He's forced to block and counter every single one of these just in case he's copying Dire's strategy. However, Jonathan planned for this and he drives Pluck straight into Dio's blind spot, completely slicing off his arm. Not wanting to waste any time, Jonathan swings his blade straight down the center of Dio's head. And here I just want to point out how satisfying Jonathan's growth as a character is. We went from seeing him as this weakling boy, and now he stands before us as this heroic man, and that's just so awesome. I fucking love this guy. However, Dio isn't finished here. Right before Jonathan could slice straight through Dio's dick, he freezes Pluck. The sudden temperature shift also freezes Jonathan's arms. Oh shit, I guess things are really heating up. Or maybe they're cooling off. Listen, I don't know how to write clever jokes. Cut me some slack. I couldn't think of a way to force the pink ping pong ball joke into the script. Dio then jabs two of his fingers into Jonathan's neck. He has a major artery pumping right in his grasp. All it would take is one sudden movement and Jonathan is cooked. Jonathan tries to free himself with a kick, which just fails, as Dio counters by freezing his foot. He may be able to shatter it just like Dire. How will he get out of this one, chat? Mods, run a prediction please and thank you. But Jonathan knows all of Dio's tricks at this point. He deduces that Dio cannot drink blood and keep him frozen at the same time. Meanwhile, Pluck's tip has been heating up inside of a flame's torch. His arms are now thawed, and he sends a sunlight yellow overdrive right into Dio's skull. But Dio is able to freeze Jonathan's arms once again before the Hamon energy could be transferred. Dio now takes a moment to heal himself and gloat. Jonathan now readies himself for round 2. His arms no longer being frozen anymore, okay? There sure are a lot of inconsistencies with Jonathan's arms, huh? Jonathan winds up his strongest attack yet. His Hamon energy is so hot, Dio's body heat manipulation literally cannot freeze him. Think of this attack as a combination between the Scarlet and Yellow Overdrive. He's able to pierce right through Dio's body as his Hamon energy just surges all throughout it. Dio isn't ready to accept defeat, as he unveils his final and ultimate technique, an eye laser beam that Jonathan isn't even fast enough to fully dodge. And dude, this laser is able to split clouds apart. Thankfully, Jonathan wasn't hit directly. Like, just imagine if he died right here. But he doesn't die. My MC just sheds a single tear for the loss of Dio. For the loss of his brother. It wasn't an easy journey, and it sure as all hell wasn't an ordinary one. But he did it. Jonathan did it. The episode comes to a close as Speedwagon cries out to Zeppeli, letting him know that Jonathan was successful in carrying out their mission.
見てるかいゼペリのおっさんやったぞジョースターさんがついにやったテオは死んだ大げさかもしれんが世界は救われたんだ
Before getting into the finale, let's discuss characters and voice acting. The voice acting across both the sub and the dub was incredibly solid. The two standouts, of course, being both of Dio's voice actors, who absolutely capture his complex, sinister charisma to a T. The rest of the cast, like I just said, was solid. Not great and not bad either. There really aren't any examples that stuck with me, aside from a couple of Jonathan's overdrive screams. Listen, I am a Dragon Ball fan. If you make a technique look cool, give it a cool name, and then yell it, I'm probably gonna like it. Characterization is where I have some of my biggest gripes, however. Jonathan and Dio were great. I think you'd be able to tell that just from the rest of this review. Speedwagon is the best waifu for sure. I love his admiration and his appreciation for his friends. Zeppeli is a goofy but surprisingly complex and stoic mentor character. But everyone else is kinda bad in my opinion. Listen, this part introduces a lot of characters that ultimately serve little to no purpose to the story at all. Tom Petty, Straightso, and Dire, they weren't needed for that final encounter. If you were to remove them, nothing changes from the story. Instead of having them fight off all of the bodyguards, don't introduce the idea of the bodyguards. or if he really wanted to keep the bodyguards, instead have Dio call them off because he personally wants to be the one to take down Jonathan. This is in line for his character and removes this needless bloating. I get that the countless zombie bodyguards were supposed to add tension, but we don't have enough time to make a meaningful connection to these 3 new Hamon users. And their shenanigans distract from the major battle this whole show has been building up towards. And because of that, that battle was pretty short. While the choreography was pretty interesting, it ended way too soon. Arena is kind of a nothing romantic interest character as well. While I do find her dates with Jonathan cute and her queen energy admirable, what does she do? What does she want? Who is she? We don't get any of that information until part 2, where she's a much more jaded, elderly character. She isn't even in more than half of the show, but she has a very big significance towards Jonathan's motivations. It would have been nice to see a little bit more of that up until the finale, which we'll get to in just one second. And then there's Poco. There's another issue I have with Araki's writing, something that I'm just going to call the kid issue for a lack of a better term. In basically every single part, there's a significantly younger cast character that gets introduced, usually in the latter half, that has just a tiny little arc and then assists in helping our protagonist in one way or shape or form. All of them, except for Trish and Emporio, I don't really enjoy their inclusions. Their issues are usually more juvenile and disjointed from everything else that's going on. Like, listen, it's nice that Poco learned to be braver, but was he written to only open the gate where Tarkus was, and then learn the lesson of being brave? If that's the case, why even have that door be locked? You could save time and space on each of your manga panels and in the anime by completely removing his character. Oh, but what about his sister, I hear you asking? What's her name? Go on, tell me, what is her name? Don't open the JoJo fandom or whatever other website that they moved to. What is Poco's sister's name? Yeah, that's what I thought. And don't even get me started on Tarkus. Why did he legitimately do nothing until Bluford was dead? It may sound like I dislike the characters and their characterization, but I don't actually. This was one of my favorite casts. You'll see later parts have very large casts, sometimes too large. Characters in the main group will sometimes not interact with one another. Think of all the times that Polnareff is by himself in part 3, or how basically only Josuke and he who shall not be named have plots together. If you don't know what to do with a large cast of characters, use a smaller cast, and part 1 does this well. While the writing's more simplistic, I think that suits the story part 1 is trying to tell. We have our obvious hero, villain, supporting cast, and so on. It's small and simple, and let's be real, Jonathan and Dio are fantastically written characters that are always a pleasure to see, which is clearly this part's main focus. So, with that all established, let's wrap up this review and finally discuss the finale. So, the finale has a pretty upbeat introduction. Dio's clothes were burned at the bottom of the cliffside, the stone mask is destroyed, and Jonathan and Reina even got married. Looks like we're having a pretty happy ending to the series. However, there's just one thing I can't get over. It almost feels too easy. It really makes you wonder what the next 18 minutes of this episode are gonna be. If I didn't know any better, I'd almost think, where's Dio?
ディオ様そのボディさえあれば
Well, somehow, the Asian medicine man from before found Dio's head and rescued him. Now he's being stowed away on the same ship Jonathan will be celebrating his honeymoon on. Jonathan quickly spots the medicine man and gives chase. In the belly of the ship, Dio was revealed just to be a severed head living in a glass case. He compliments Jonathan's strength, while also telling him his devious intentions. He plans to behead him and then take over his body. Dio fires his eye laser and Jonathan attempts to block, but he's distracted by Arena, who has been looking for him. This causes him to slip up and... he gets pierced through his throat. Nope. Jonathan is now having difficulties breathing, greatly weakening his Hammond. The medicine man now begins to taunt Jonathan, and Dio quickly scolds him for this. Dio has truly come full circle and has developed a genuine respect for Jonathan. While the motivations behind this respect may be dubious, it's still a fun character interaction I wanted to emphasize. Jonathan musters up the last of his strength and performs one last Hammond attack. This attack sends the medicine man into the ship's machinery, which will cause the entire vessel to explode. Arena runs over and comforts Jonathan, wanting to die by his side, but Jonathan isn't about to die here. He urges Arena to get into Dio's coffin and live. he also instructs her to rescue a baby whose mother was just gnawed to death by a zombie. Oh, yeah, zombie. By the way, I totally just now realized that I've been calling zombies vampires like the entire script. So, sorry about that. Teehee. That aside, Arena has no need to worry here. Jonathan surely has another trick up his sleeve, but so does Dio. He snares Jonathan's throat and tries to take over his entire body, but Jonathan grabs him and he just refuses to let go. Wait. The two then start hanging out and going out on little dates. This is a very fun contrast. Oh shit! Let's go, JoJo! He's calling him a true gentleman, and the two quickly become friends. Yes, Jonathan. Jonathan, the best gentleman there ever was. We went from seeing him as this weakling boy, and now he stands before us as this heroic man.
見てるかいゼフェリのおっさんやったぞジョースターさんがついにやったテオは死んだ大げさかもしれんが世界は救われたんだ
I'm back after crying for 20-ish hours, and oh look, the ship just exploded. We get to see that Arena and the baby safely escaped, and yeah. This season ends with the promise for more bizarre adventures in the future, with an ominous close-up of a man who's encased in stone. And that was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 Phantom Blood. I really enjoyed it. It's a shame that, from my understanding, a majority of JoJo's fans just skip this part and jump straight to Part 3 to see all the silly, goofy stand abilities. There's a lot to enjoy and appreciate in this short season. Hell, you could even binge the entire thing in a single afternoon. It certainly has its quirks and hiccups, but I can excuse the majority of them. This may be because of how connected everything felt. Unlike other JoJo's parts, there really wasn't a lot of fluff. Every scene and every episode felt like a continuation on the same centralized plot. There weren't many side quests or distractions for our protagonist to overcome. Basically, every episode began with a retelling of the last one's ending, which made everything feel very cohesive. I don't feel strongly which version is superior between the English dub and the Japanese sub either. I think both are solid, so if this review piqued your interest at all, I'd recommend giving the series a chance. I'm so glad that I was, forced to watch the entire series of JoJo's. And all that started with part 1. I love Jonathan, I love Dio, I loved Hamon. It's a short, simple action-adventure series with horror elements that doesn't take itself too seriously. But let me know what you think. Leave a comment sharing your experiences with part 1 and what points you agree or disagree with me on. And if you're listening to this, thank you so much for listening to this entire review. This part is the first time I'm going completely off script and just straight off the dome. This is going to sound much more like my other videos and everything. But yeah, if you made it this far, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you guys so much. I've never done anything like this before, and it's certainly been stressful because of the amount of the deadline that I placed on myself and the amount of workload I've done and time trying to manage everything again. It's been a little bit tricky, but I really did enjoy doing this. I enjoyed the experience I got. It's definitely helped me learn how to do stuff in DaVinci a little bit better. But yeah, what did you guys think of the review? Did I do fantastic and should I do this again, or was this an awful one-off idea that I should never do again? I would be interested to try this with all the other parts. The only issue is, seeing as, part 1 is only 9 episodes, and this was a very long endeavor, and this video is already very long. I'm doing this part at the very, very end. And my DaVinci timeline, I think right now I'm a little bit over an hour. So I guess that's not too bad. That's roughly 10 minutes an episode, I guess, or per segment. But yeah, part 3 and 4, I'm pretty sure 50 episodes each. And then part 5 and 6 are 40-ish, probably. That might be 52, I don't know. But that would be fun. Or maybe I could do other short series. If there's, I got plenty of stuff out there that I feel sure I could do something on. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. And then, like I said at the beginning of this episode, this is a birthday gift to my girlfriend. So happy birthday again. I love you so much, and I really hope that you enjoyed watching this and you were able to see the amount of effort that I put into it. And everyone, please definitely go check out her channel. Like I said, I'm going to link one of her videos in the description below, so if you want to send her birthday wishes or just check out some of her stuff, I would highly recommend it, and I would really appreciate it. But I don't think I really need to do any more rambling, so I'm just going to go ahead and end this here. So that is going to be all for this time, guys. I've been the Supro27. I'm a variety... Well, yeah, I'm a variety Twitch streamer and an up-and-coming PNG tuber trying to make it big in the world. I have a Twitter, a Twitch, and a YouTube, all of which can be found at the links in the description below. But that's going to be all for now. So as always, I've been the Supro27, and I am signing off.